Peace, family. It's your brother, Mr. Macho Black. I'm here representing Mastering Mindsets with the High Priest, the great young elder. Can I call you a young elder? Brother Jabari Osaze. So it's good to have you here.
Oh, it's great to be here. It's
a pleasure. It's a pleasure. So you're out here being the keynote speaker for the Kemet in the Desert series. So what I want to talk to you about is the proprietor, the creator, the founder of Kemet in the Desert, our beloved Franklin G. Verley III, who transitioned. It's passed along. So what I want to talk to you about is dealing with grief, mainly with transitioning and how we should deal with grief. Basically, like from a spiritual standpoint, what are some of our oldest traditions and rituals when it comes to dealing with grief?
Grief is an important part of life. And I think that very often people try not to grieve when they've lost someone. And the reality is that we have to grieve in order to get to the next stage, and that's celebrating and completing one's works. Because when these magnificent ancestors made their transition, you know that if you were doing anything and you made your transition, there's stuff that you would have expected to be completed, right?
Right.
Imagine if we were not sitting here for the 7th annual Kemet in the Desert. I'm telling you, when you sleeping tonight, when y'all are sleeping tonight, Franklin would have tugged your foot, as they say in the hood, right?
Absolutely.
You'd be like, who touched me? You'd be like, what? You knew that we were supposed to do that. What do you mean? You just left that unfinished.
Right.
So we have to grieve in order to get to the next stage. And that's celebrating the good works of our ancestors and completing them. So I want to say that in African societies, there are lots of ways that we used to grieve. You'll see on the in papyruses, often from Kemet, you'll see there are a number of women that be crying for the person that actually made their transition. You know, one of the major ways that we think of grief in the ancient Kemetic tradition is we look at the image of Ast, that deity that has been misnomered as Isis, in her great grief over the murder of her husband. So Africans were talking about how to recover from some of the most difficult things that you can experience. And I would say that we see in the African tradition, in the ancient world, and hopefully also we'll see it more in the modern world, we'll find ways to have access to our ancestors. So you'll even see on papyrus on temple walls, altars to ancestors. How many of us have altars to those people who have made their transition? Because in actuality, if we are cultivating our relationships with them, we can still have access to them. Brother Franklin can do more now than he could have when he was in physical form.
Wow.
And so we have to be able to cultivate that relationship.
I think in the age that we're in now, I think a lot of the altars are being done digitally in the form of Facebook posts with photos of their loved ones or even celebrities they may have met one time. So I think the altar went from the physical to the digital. So,
and I don't think that there's anything wrong with posting pictures of people who you were close to that passed on and saying a few words. But if it's just that, what you might be doing is looking to get clicks because you were close to somebody. So we have to go beyond that. There is no digital substitution for having your altar at home for your ancestor. And so I would expect that as we are in the midst of Kemet in the Desert, you know that Brother Franklin is here. You know he's here. Where else would he be?
Right.
So we need to make sure that we are feeding him, that we are communicating with him. You might have noticed in the first time in Kemet in the Desert, there was an altar on the stage to Brother Franklin.
Right.
He was sitting on the stage with us. That was of critical importance. Today is also the day that we commemorate the passing of El Hajj Malik El Shabazz, Malcolm X. All of you should be lighting candles, having your altars for him. And somebody's going to say, that's spooky. Well, if you think that's spooky, then what is it that you suggest we do when our ancestors pass on? We need to be able to continue to cultivate the relationship with those people who have transitioned.
I think we've been taught that that's spooky or weird. I think that's Western civilization.
That's right.
I mean, and when it's not done their way, they want to, demonize it. So they may look at, voodoo or voodoo as something evil or satanic, but, every first Sunday in church, we're drinking the blood of Jesus.
That's right.
His flesh.
That's right.
It's just it's the stigma they paint upon them because it's not their way.
And one of the reasons why they painted the stigma is because they recognize if Africans were connected to their culture, connected to their story, connected to their narrative, then we would still be empowered.
Yeah.
So when you disconnect someone from who they are, you can tell them who they are. You can tell them that they are no good, but all they can do is servant. All they can be is in servitude. And if you believe it, then why would you seek to free yourself? So ultimately, one of the reasons why there's such discomfort with African spirituality is because the power that brought us here, that stole us from our homeland, wanted to be able to commodify us. And so we have to now undo that. Now, let's keep in mind the same people who are saying that you should not have an altar. When you go to church, the altar is right behind the priest. You know, I know that when I went to church, I was raised Roman Catholic. They even had a side altar where you put a little quarter in and a little light would come on for your ancestor. Listen, it was okay to do it there, but don't do it at home.
Right.
Right? That there's a problem. People have said astrology, looking at the stars is wrong, but you may know that Easter does not fall on the same day every year.
Right.
Well, it is dictated by the first full moon after the spring equinox.
Right.
This is looking at the stars. Right. So when you do it, there's something wrong.
Right.
When we do it, that's holy, that's sacred. We have to get back to embracing spirituality as a personal practice.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of slavery, and we all know from the teachings of Dr. Ivan Van Sertima, who wrote They Came Before Columbus, that there was an African presence here in the Americas long before slavery.
Mm-hmm.
So how would you respond to a statement I heard an elder make saying that only 5% of the slaves here in the United States were brought from Africa? The rest were already here.
That I don't think that there's anything that should corroborate that statement. Mm-hmm. I think that the majority of us were taken against our will from West Africa. Mm-hmm. And even when you look at the period in which we are arguing that Africans might have made journeys to these shores, it is likely that those Africans either intermarried with the native population that was here, or they didn't stay. I mean, the reality is that when you look at black folks in the United States, for the most part, we are the descendants of the enslaved. Mm-hmm. And I know that is a difficult topic. Who wants to think about your family undergoing and enduring one of the most inhumane practices ever recorded in human history? But the reality is, the reason why we're uncomfortable with that is because we've been told the wrong story about our enslavement.
Exactly.
We were the least powerful people, and we destroyed the most powerful global system of record. Black people are unbreakable,
absolutely,
resilient, powerful, relentless. If you looked at it that way and you understood that we didn't get out of enslavement because good white folk came into their right moral minds, but because we destroyed the system, now we would look at our enslavement as a point of pride. Mm-hmm. We would say, yeah, that happened to us, but look at where we are. And that's what we have to do. We have to tell the story very differently.
And pardon me for not knowing the brother's name, but he has probably one of the most polarizing and most famous photos of his back. You know what I'm talking about?
Of course I do. So it's in the book.
Exactly.
It's in my book.
So that brother actually walked his way, mostly at night, to the north. And when he got there, he didn't rest. What did he do? He joined the military to fight against slavery, right?
You're talking about the brother that we should know as Gordon.
Gordon.
This brother was enslaved. He was a rebellious African. He had tried to escape twice before. And they decided they would not give him any shoes. That was one of the things that they did, because they said, how could he escape to freedom if he didn't have no shoes?
Right.
And so he decides that he's going to make another attempt to escape. He hears that the Union soldiers are, I think the distance is about 40 miles away, and he slowly begins to steal onions. An onion is missing here, an onion is missing there. What was he going to do with the onions?
Was he trying to throw off the scent?
He was throwing off his scent. Mm-hmm. He had to collect the onions slowly and hide the onions. I can only imagine what this process was like. And I'm going to say to the folks watching, when you have an onion, you need to think about Gordon. Mm-hmm. So what did he do? He took the onions, he rubbed them all over his body so that the dogs would not be able to capture him. And he literally makes a journey barefoot 40 miles to the Union line. When he gets there and they do a physical, they see the most horrific welts on his back. And unfortunately, that's the story that we have. Almost anyone who has ever heard anything about enslavement has seen that image. But we haven't seen the image of him, which was now listen, photographs were difficult to come by. Right. But there is a drawing, an etching. Now this is even more difficult to do in that day and age, of him in his Union soldier uniform. Mm-hmm. So he doesn't say, look at what they did to me, I've had enough, isn't it amazing I made it here, now let me just go someplace safe. He says, give me a gun, I'm not free until we're free. And so his story is amazing. If we knew more stories like his, we would actually look at our enslavement differently.
Brother
Gordon. And he literally leads a battalion to free the Africans in the same plantation that he was from.
Wow.
His story is amazing. So we need to know more about him.
Wow, that's amazing. Well, Brother Jabari, we'll leave it right there for right now. I appreciate your time. Thank you for stopping by. Again, I'm comedian Macho from Mastering Mindsets. If you want more information on Mastering Mindsets, www.masteringmindsets.org. Peace, family. I appreciate y'all time. Peace. Thank you.